Hi there, everybody. It's 3 o'clock here in the UK, so we're going to get started. A reminder for those of you that have just joined us, we're going to be using Meetoo throughout this session, so please make sure you download the Meetoo app if you haven't already, or access the web app at web.meetoo.io and join our session with meeting ID 198414138. Okay, so thanks all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. This is our webinar on running employee comms meetings that people actually want to go to, and I'm joined today by my colleague Peter Eyre.
Hi there.
Right. So please do jump onto Meetoo, as we've said. We want you to ask us some questions as we go through, but we're also going to be asking you some questions through some live polling. So let's get started. Now, internal comms meetings have many names. There could be all hands and town halls, are just to name two, but we're going to be talking primarily about larger town halls today. However, the content will be relevant to almost any size of comms meeting. So a quick look at our agenda for the session. First of all, we're going to look at a few examples of some organisations that run these meetings. We're going to be sharing some of our tips and observations for running them successfully. Pete's then going to look at 5 killer question types for your town halls, and then we're going to have a few minutes at the end for some Q&A. So again, good reason to get connected to Meetoo so that you could submit them to us. And you'll notice at the bottom corner of our slides here, we've got the web app for anybody that joined us late and missed the Meetoo introduction. But overall, our goal for the session is to get across to you just how simple it is to run really effective and inclusive comms meetings, and to give you the tools and confidence to go ahead and do it. Okay, so we had a quote on screen at the very beginning, and you'll see it's here in black again. It's the benefit of an open town hall meeting is that 1, you get to hear a lot of different views, and 2, it has credibility. So who's this quote by? Is it Donald Trump, John McCain, the Dalai Lama, or Richard Branson? So please use your Meetoo app to put in which one you think is the correct answer. And we'll give you a couple of seconds to actually respond to that question there. Okay, we'll close the vote and have a little look at the results. 50-50 this time. Okay, that's interesting. The actual answer is John McCain. Now, this was obviously just a bit of fun in terms of this poll, but it actually serves as a dual purpose. First of all, it gets you all used to the technology that we're going to be using today, but also shows you that town hall meetings aren't just for businesses. And you know, most of you will probably be aware that Obama hosted quite a few high-profile town hall meetings while he was in office as well that were broadcast. So, you know, it's worth saying though that what we're going to talk about is relevant whether you're a Meetoo or another app user or not. Yet, of course. Okay, so our first section, who's doing it and why. It's probably sensible to actually start with the why. So according to the Institute of Internal Communication, at the most basic level, you have to communicate well at the right time so that employees know what's expected of them and what is happening in the organisation. And at a deeper level, for employees to feel engaged with their workplace and give their best, they actually have to believe their organisation cares about their views and understands how their role contributes towards the overall business objectives. Now, internal comms is, obviously always been important, and recently town halls have become a really key part of all of that. But the reason for that is a couple of things have changed in recent years. Now, more so than ever, people really want to know what's going on in their organisation, and they expect to be able to have their say, but they also expect the leadership to listen. And cost-effective technology actually now allows organisations to have a two-way conversation with their workforce. And according to sources such as the IOIC, as I've mentioned, but in Forbes, organisations that choose to ignore this see higher employee churn rates, lower productivity, and lower engagement levels. Now, there are probably a few CEOs out there that would love to spend one-on-one time with every employee, but it's just not possible, which is why interactive town halls have become just so popular. So I'm going to briefly introduce you to 3 well-known brands and Meetoo customers that we engage with regularly and look at how they run their town halls. So the first is a large pharmaceutical company, and the challenge they face is keeping their global workforce, which just happens to be shy of about 100,000 people, is keeping them engaged and working in the same direction. especially during times of change in leadership and strategy. So what did they do to solve it? Well, they regularly hold town hall and all hands meetings, and that's departmentally, regionally, and in these times of significant change as an entire business. They found the key to success of these meetings is allowing all employees to participate no matter their location or time zone. And they do this by deploying a polling and messaging app, but specifically by opening that channel of communication a few days prior to the meeting to allow questions and comments to be submitted to the leadership for addressing during the meeting. They then open that channel again post-meeting to allow for more questions to be asked once the meeting content has been digested. Importantly though, they always level the playing field by making all of the interaction anonymous. The results that we hear back from them are that these meetings are incredibly popular. They get more feedback than ever, and leadership at all levels greatly value the real and honest content they get, and there's no way they could go back to how they used to deliver them previously. And as I mentioned, on occasion they do organise town halls on an incredible scale, which is when they come around, the employees don't just want to sit back and wait for a report to arrive afterwards. They want to be at that meeting and participating. And that immediately proves the value of hosting these huge broadcasts, and they say that the app is really fundamental to the success of it. Next up is a leading online retailer who's actually one of our longest standing customers. And rather than me explain about them, I think I'll just read an extract from a quote from their European comms manager, because I think it describes their challenge perfectly. So, we needed a way to engage employees during our all hands, fireside chats and stand-up meetings, and give them a way to interact with the people speaking, especially during live webcasts. With a global workforce, we found it difficult to capture feedback at virtual meetings with employees spread across different offices and countries. Now, the solution that they actually needed had to be simple, had to be accessible via mobile, had to work in real time, it needed to be customizable and encourage engagement within a live meeting environment. And what's the result? Well, they started working with us in about 2012, and since then they've actually broadened the variety of the meetings in which they use this technology. It's actually become ingrained in their culture. So much so that actually they've now got their own white labelled version of the app. And then finally, I just want to mention PwC. Now, not just because they're a well-known brand and established global business, but because their challenge was one that we hear quite often from our customers and potential customers. Now, although they are clearly a global leader, they felt in some ways as if they were a traditional and slow to change type of company. But they really did want to modernise their internal meetings. So their chosen solution was to take a leap of faith with an interaction app for its ability to provide a safe and secure but live communication channel. And here's what they said about the result. We weren't sure what to expect with Meetoo and surprised by how interactive and exciting it made our meetings. Meetoo enabled over 1,100 PwC employees to participate during the meeting through live polling and messaging. Now, importantly though, this wasn't just a one-off. They actually continue to run regular meetings regionally and locally, capturing employee feedback and using that content to really drive the next and their future meetings. So that was just a brief example of 3 different companies with varying needs. But actually what they all have in common is that it took someone within the organisation to take a leap of faith and to change that format of their town halls and introduce some different technology. But as you can imagine, there are always some concerns around opening these channels of communication and still maintaining some control. Now, one of the fears that many of our customers talk about when considering implementing an app is the risk of anarchy breaking out. They really want to be seen to be listening, transparent and approachable, but often resist taking that leap due to this fear. So here's a couple of the ways that we help them overcome that. Now, the secret really is about maintaining control for them while still encouraging open and honest engagement. So set up with a system and technology in place to allow some moderation in order to keep that control over the content that might be shared or might not be shared and when. Level the playing field by allowing employees to be anonymous. There is no doubt at all that anonymity yields the greatest volume and quality of interaction. Give everybody a chance to have their say by opening up their interactivity prior to the meeting. Now that might be a few minutes or even a few days before, depending on the format and the size of your meeting. Then ensure that the technology runs smoothly and enhances the meeting by setting the tone for the role of the tech in it and making sure that everybody knows how to use it. A lack of confidence or trust on the employee part is actually one of the greatest barriers to adoption. And then finally, ask the right questions. And to help with that, I'm going to hand over to Pete.
Thanks, Dermot. Okay, I'm going to talk through 5 killer questions now. But before I do that, I'd like to ask you a question. If you could answer this question, please. The poll is open. What is the biggest barrier to getting honest, uninhibited feedback in your organisation? Is it fear of judgment from peers, fear of what the boss might think or say or even do, no opportunity or channel to do so, feeling that there's no point contributing, or is it something else? And if it is something else, please click on 5, and when the poll's over, tap that something else into the chat board on Meetoo. Okay, I can see those coming in, and I think that's enough, so I'll just close that off now. Okay, and that is consistent with what we found on the webinar this morning as well, and consistent with what a lot of our clients and customers and users tell us. Okay, I mean, the reason we ask that is just as important as asking these 5 killer questions and asking the right questions is ensuring people are both motivated and able to answer those questions. As Dermot talked about before, that's how you get the real information that can make a difference. Solving that alone is a big step forward, and an app is one of the ways of doing it. Okay, so the 5 killer questions. Well, from conversations with our clients and partners and online analysis, we found that there's a common thread in question content that runs through the majority of really successful employee comms meetings, whatever the industry sector or scale of the meeting. So we've grouped together those 5 question types that are used the most, and they also represent key stages in an employee comms meeting. So I'll take you through those now, give you some practical examples, and of course we'll share this presentation with you afterwards if you would like to use those or adapt those at all. So the first one is the let it all out question. So as Dermot mentioned before in the case studies, it's not essential, but it's strongly recommended to open up the channels of communication early before the meeting. This serves several purposes. It allows everyone to set a meaningful and relevant agenda for the meeting. It gives everyone the chance to be heard. They might want to suggest an idea, or they might just need a vent, and that's all part of the process. But this way they can do it in a controlled way. It also provides a temperature check before the meeting for meeting organisers and presenters so they can set the tone correctly. But most importantly, it represents the channels of communication being well and truly open. Examples of those types of question would be, what is working well within the company? What is working not so well within the company? Show that you're open to that honest feedback, but keep it constructive. What are your suggestions for improvement? What are the greatest organisational challenges you see? There might be something specific that you're getting, you'd like an answer from your team. And set the agenda for the meeting. What questions or issues do you want us to address in the upcoming town hall meeting? Those questions alone can really take you a step forward in the understanding within the business, and we call that the undercover boss effect. So, question type number 2, do they understand? So, perhaps at the start of the meeting you've responded to a lot of those questions already. You may have put forward an initiative or a strategy, and the goal of the meeting is to get people general approval from the team of those plans or of those responses you've given. But before you can get approval, you really need to know that everyone understands. By getting a feel for this in the moment, it allows you to loop back and potentially reiterate a message or clear up any misunderstandings. So a really important process in the meeting. Examples here would be, on a scale of 1 to 5, how clear are you on the strategy? What are the team's 3 priority goals for 2017? So getting a bit more specific. Or why not ask something really specific? If you want to check a very key point and check everyone understands it, version 5.6 of the software will be released in which month? And again, you could give people a multiple choice answer there and just make sure they absolutely know the answer. And for those that don't, this will probably reinforce the learning for them. Okay, next up is the on the bus question. So we hear this analogy used a lot, and this is where employees, after being given the information, are asked, Are they in for the ride? Are they on the bus? Do they want to go where the business or the bus is going? And if they're not, maybe this is a time to question that, or maybe they need further information or reassurance. Knowing how people feel on this issue is really, really key in moving forward. It's well documented that engaged workforces work harder, they care more, they own their results, and therefore they're more likely to achieve or exceed the desired outcomes of the business. So a really key type of question. Again, early understanding of how people feel on this allows you to go and address any issues. Types of question you might ask here. Do you believe that the strategy can be successful? So these questions are all about belief. And you might use a scale here. 1, not at all. 5, definitely, to push people into a category. Do you believe that you will hit your targets based on this plan? So make it about the individual. Or make it about the overall picture. How confident are you in our ability to grow based on what you've heard today? With all these questions, if you're not quite where you'd like to be in terms of how the responses come in, this is the time to ask why. Open up the chat, honest, uninhibited feedback, and again, you can flesh out these answers and again, address them. Number 4, the was it worth it question. So essentially this is an evaluation question, and it's a chance to temperature check and gather some measurable data for analysis or comparison, perhaps from meeting to meeting, perhaps year on year, or even from the start of the meeting to the end of the meeting. And this is a feature we see used a great deal with our app. There's a feature in there that allows you to ask a question at the start, then impart some information or maybe try and persuade the team of a new way of thinking, and then ask them how they feel or what they know at the end, and show a visualization on screen of how the opinion or the knowledge is shifted in the audience. Again, really key in the moment information. So the key here in these evaluations is to ask, and it sounds really obvious, but to ask the questions that give you the answers you really want to know about. Don't fill it out with lots of questions that fill time or are kind of nice to ask. If you need to know something specific, ask a very specific question. This is the opportunity to really improve things and learn. Examples here. Was this meeting a good use of your time? 1, no. 5, definitely. Based on this meeting, are you going to attend the next one? How would you rate this session overall? 1, poor. 5, outstanding. And what was the most useful part of this meeting for you? And this is a really key one. Listing out the different agenda items allows you to fine-tune these meetings and pick on the bit that's most important to people, and maybe that's what you spend more time on the next time around. It's also worth noting that some real depth here, and especially with larger meetings, you might want to ask some profiling questions. So how long have they been with the business? Which location are they based in? Which department do they work in? Are all great questions to narrow down on where potentially the issues or ideas are coming from within a business. However, you've got to be careful with this for potentially smaller meetings. Otherwise, it can look like you're playing a game of Guess Who by asking a series of questions and deducing who might be asking them. So again, that's probably one for a larger business where it's important to have some kind of narrowing down. These are also the types of question that, to avoid embarrassing anyone or to avoid anarchy, you might want to hide the responses on, and Dermott will show us that in a minute. This could be the right time to do that to maintain that control. So finally, the next steps question. What's next? A meeting is all about actions. You've got to show the meeting had purpose, show it mattered, show you're open to improvement, and show we're going to do something about it. Some examples here include, what do you want to learn or hear about in the next meeting? Make it about the next meeting. Make sure everyone knows this was not a one-off. How often should we hold these meetings? Sounds really simple. It's a question we ask internally when we run these meetings, and it's really helped us steer a schedule that works for people. And finally, turn it on its head. Don't make it all about asking what you should do better as a management team or leadership team. Ask everyone what they're going to do differently and what effect this meeting might have had on them. So name one thing that you will do differently as a result of this meeting. Okay, so that's the end of our 5 questions. So we've looked at why these meetings are important. We've shared some case studies and formats, and we've shared the tried and tested question types. I hope by the end of this you feel confident and maybe inspired to run your next internal comms meeting with a few of the tips we've shared today. And if you've not used an app before, we'd be delighted if you tried Meetoo. It's very simple. You just go to the website meetoo.com and you can sign up for a free account there. And if you do need any help or guidance, we'd like to discuss how to make it work for your employee comms meeting, we'd be delighted to help with that. So that's the end of my section. I'll hand over to Dermot now for any questions that might have come in, and then we've got a couple of quick polls to ask at the end to help us learn from this meeting as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Pete. So we have got a couple of questions in here. I'll start from the bottom here. Tom asked a good question. He said he's interested in using Meetoo for the meetings. Would you advise using it only for larger meetings? Do you advise using Meetoo differently for types of meeting sizes? Do you want to say that?
Yeah. Shall I go from the? I'll go from the top, shall I?
Okay. I'll just read this one out, so I'll just answer this.
Yeah.
I think Meetoo can be used for, or any app, of course, don't want to be too one-sided, can be used for any size of meeting. So it really depends what you're trying to get out of it. They're great for larger meetings because it actually gives everybody a way to ask their questions, and the person presenting or moderating is able to get all that information in and look it through before they start answering any of the questions. But we've seen apps being used in small meetings of 5 or 6 people actually, where you just make it totally anonymous and people can actually respond to polls or ask their questions that maybe they wouldn't ask in a smaller meeting because of some of the fears that were part of that poll that we asked at the very beginning.
I'll just go for the question from Dwight here. Is there a way to see if employees have learned anything via a poll, like a comparison poll or something like that? Yes, absolutely. That would be the before and after comparison. So that allows you to compare potentially between meetings, or at the start of the meeting, what's your knowledge level on a certain subject, then talk about it, and then ask exactly the same poll at the end. You then just go to another slide, so press enter again, and it brings up both polls on the same slide for comparison. Yes, one of the most popular features that gets used.
And actually really useful. You can, with the current function, you can actually compare up to 6 versions of the same poll. So actually, if you want to do that temperature check or that learning throughout, a whole meeting, or we see it, in education across a whole semester, or, even before a meeting, then during a meeting, and then, a couple of days afterwards, you can really check that either shift in opinion or learning. Ryan's put in a good question here. How many polls would you recommend doing throughout a meeting, and how would you measure how engaged employees are throughout? So you've seen what we've done today. We had a poll at the beginning, one in the middle, and we'll come on to some more at the end. It depends really what you're looking for. You don't want to overload people with questions because it feels like they're doing more talking than you are. If you're attending a town hall as an employee, you probably want to hear a lot of information coming, from the leadership. So I would suggest, probably 1 or 2 at the beginning, and then a couple spread out throughout the session for the very reason that you've mentioned here, Ryan, is that you want to make sure people are still engaged. We see a thing called the engagement curve, where actually, people's attention and engagement drops off as a meeting goes on. But by doing something like a live poll or a call to action with the chat board, you can actually get people to spike their engagement up again. So just, a couple at the start, again in the middle, and then again at the end.
Okay, I've got a question here from Sophie. Love the question ideas. Is there a limit to how many attendees you can have for each meeting? No, there's not a limit. The only thing I can think that would limit you is if you've got everyone in one venue rather than spread across the world, just make sure your Wi-Fi infrastructure is up to it to make sure everyone can get on and not be frustrated that they're not part of the meeting. But yeah. Yeah,
I think the standard licenses for Meetoo is 1,500 participants per session, but actually you can engage with us and get boosts, even much higher. We've done boosts for up to 100,000 people before, so no real limit there. Stuart's come in with a question here. Can you set up conditional questions, ones that automatically queue up different follow-up questions based on responses? So not automatically, but actually, and we can post out a link to this afterwards. There's a way to use hyperlinks in PowerPoint where you can actually choose a different route through your presentation. And there's a really good example from Adam Warren, at Southampton University, and he actually has done this using the Meetoo PowerPoint add-in, where depending on the most popular response, he then clicks on that option, and it takes him off to a different part of his presentation. And I'll send out a link to that just in a moment. Okay, I think we're drying up on questions here, Pete. So we'll leave this open, this chat board open. So if you've got any other questions, please do drop them in and we'll respond to them via the chat board. But as Pete mentioned, I want to ask a couple of follow-up questions here just to see how useful this webinar was to you. So in particular, the content here, how useful was the content of this webinar? From 1, didn't learn anything new, to 5, extremely useful, I learnt lots. Please be very honest with this. These feedback questions are the only way that we can improve these webinars. So I think we're gonna hide the results here, which is another thing to be able to show you that you don't have to share that feedback straight away, just to potentially spare our blushes. So please be honest. Okay, I'm going to take that result there. And then on to my last question. What did you think of this webinar overall? Was it a total waste of your time, or was it extremely valuable, again on a 1 to 5 scale? And once again, please be brutally honest with us. Once I close this poll, if you've got any other feedback that you'd like to share with us on how we can improve this session, or if there's another particular session that you would like us to present on or show you how to do with Meetoo, please just let us know via the chat board, and we will be sure to produce some content for you. Okay, we close that off, and again, we're just thanking you for the results. And like I said, please let us know via the chat board any other feedback or thoughts you might have. That's all from us. Thank you, Pete. Thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next session, which will be in a month's time. So please keep an eye, and we'll email you about that. Thank you.